The storm hit before anyone could prepare for it. 1 second, Mauro Prosperi could still see the runners ahead of him. Bright jerseys moving across orange sand. The organized chaos of the marathon des Sables doing what it always did on day 4. The next second, the sky turned brown, then black. A wall of Saharan sand traveling at 60 miles per hour erased the horizon, erased the course markers, erased every runner in front of and behind him, and reduced the entire visible world to the length of his own arm. He pulled his goggles down and his scarf up and kept moving, because he was a 39-year-old Italian pentathlete who had trained his entire adult life around the principle that stopping was worse than anything the body encountered by continuing, and because in a sandstorm in the open desert, stopping offers no advantage over moving. So he moved. For hours, through noise and sand and zero visibility, he moved. When the storm finally died and the desert went quiet again, Mauro stopped and looked around. No runners, no flags, no checkpoint visible on any horizon. Just sand, shaped differently than it had been before the storm rearranged it, stretching identically in every direction. He had half a bottle of water, a few protein bars, and the slow, precise understanding that nobody knew exactly where he was. That was day 4 of a 6-day race. He would not be found for 9 more days. What he did to stay alive in those 9 days, what he was forced to eat, what he was forced to drink, and the moment inside an abandoned desert shrine when he decided survival was no longer worth the effort. That is the part of this story that nobody who hears it ever fully forgets. Stay until the end. Because what the Sahara did to him on day 6, and what it accidentally did for him, will change the way you think about the line between dying and refusing to. Mauro Prosperi understood suffering the way most people understand their own native language, instinctively, fluently, without having to think about it. He had grown up competing at the highest levels of the modern pentathlon: fencing, swimming, horse riding, shooting, and running, a discipline that selects for people who are comfortable being uncomfortable across multiple domains simultaneously. He had represented Italy. He had spent his entire adult life training around the premise that the body could be pushed further than it wanted to go and would eventually comply. Pain was information. Exhaustion was a starting point, not a finish line. By 1994, he was 39 years old, a police officer in Rome, still competing, still training, still looking for the next thing that would test him seriously. The Marathon des Sables was exactly that thing. 150 miles across the Moroccan Sahara, run over 6 stages across 6 days. Competitors carry everything on their backs: food, sleeping gear, emergency equipment. Daytime temperatures exceed 45 degrees Celsius. The terrain alternates between hard-packed sand, loose dunes that swallow your feet with every step, and rocky plateaus that punish your joints for miles. It has a reputation as the toughest foot race on Earth, and reputations like that find their way to people like Mauro Prosperi the way fire finds its way to dry wood. He arrived in Morocco in April 1994 in the best shape of his life. The first 3 days went exactly as planned. Day 4 started the same way. Early morning start, the desert cool enough at dawn to feel almost pleasant. The long line of runners stretching across the sand. Mauro was moving well, holding his pace, somewhere in the middle of the field when the sky on the horizon changed color. A full Saharan sandstorm is not like anything a temperate climate produces. It is a wall, a physical, moving wall of sand and wind that reduces visibility to the length of your own arm within seconds of arrival. It makes a sound before it arrives. A low roar that builds from nothing to everything faster than the brain can process it. When it hit, Mauro covered his face and kept moving, navigating by compass through spinning orange chaos. Every step guesswork. The course beneath him erased as completely as if it had never existed. The storm lasted hours. When it finally cleared, he did what any trained athlete does in the first moments of understanding they are lost. Scanned for landmarks, checked the sun, listened for voices or engines. Nothing. He picked a direction based on where he believed west was and started walking. He walked through the rest of that day and through the night and into the following morning, covering what he estimated to be 30 miles before the heat of midday forced him to stop. He had been rationing his water since the storm ended. Small sips at intervals, treating dehydration as a technical problem rather than a feeling, but the supply was almost gone. The protein bars were enough for another day at most. On the second day of being lost, he found the Marabou, a small abandoned desert shrine. Low stone walls, a partial roof, protection from the sun and wind. He crawled inside and assessed his situation with the honest eyes of someone trained to see things as they actually were. The assessment was simple and bad. He was somewhere in the Sahara. Exactly where, he didn't know. His water was almost gone. Search efforts after a storm that had reshaped the sand surface across thousands of square miles of desert were not something he could count on finding him quickly. The temperature inside the stone walls was the only thing working in his favor. He started drinking his own urine. It's worth sitting with this honestly rather than moving past it. Consuming urine reintroduces waste the body has processed out for a reason, and in theory can accelerate dehydration over time. What Mauro understood was that in the immediate term it provided liquid, and liquid was the difference between a body that could still function and one that couldn't. He collected it carefully, drank it warm and bitter, and kept going. Then he found the bats. Small desert bats roosting inside the shrine. Protein wrapped in membrane and fur, hanging in the darkness above him. A week earlier the idea would have been unthinkable. Now they looked like survival. He caught them with his hands in the dark, killed them, and ate them raw. He did not describe the taste in later interviews, which probably tells you everything you need to know about the taste. What mattered was the protein and the small amount of moisture the tissue contained. He ate every bat he could catch. The days began to blur. This is what extreme dehydration and heat exposure do to time. They remove the edges from it, the clear transitions between morning and afternoon and evening that normally give a day its shape. Mauro moved at night when the temperature dropped to survivable levels and sheltered during the day when it didn't. His body was consuming itself, the reserves of fat and muscle that years of athletic training had built being stripped away hour by hour to keep the organs running. He lost track of how many days had passed. He kept walking generally south, navigating by sun and stars, believing he was moving toward the race route. What he didn't know was that he was walking southeast, away from Morocco, into Algeria. The storm had deposited him so far off course that he had been moving deeper into the wrong country for days without any way of knowing it. On what he later calculated was day 6, alone in the shrine, severely dehydrated, body deteriorating, no rescue visible and no reasonable basis for believing rescue was coming. He made a decision. He took the small knife from his race pack and cut his wrists. He has talked about this in interviews with the specific, considered honesty of someone who has had decades to understand what it meant. He was not irrational. He was not in a state he couldn't account for afterward. He was a man who had been alone in the Sahara for 6 days, physically shutting down, running calculations that kept arriving at the same conclusion, and he decided that ending it on his own terms was preferable to the slow, ugly process of dying of thirst in the desert. The Sahara saved his life by accident. His blood was so thick from dehydration, so concentrated, the plasma volume so reduced by days without adequate water, that it barely flowed. The cuts clotted almost immediately. He looked at his wrists and understood that the desert had taken so much from him that it had accidentally made him too dried out to bleed properly. Something shifted. He has described it differently in different interviews, sometimes as anger, sometimes as the sudden absurdity of the situation cutting through the despair, sometimes simply as the body refusing to cooperate with the mind's worst decision. Whatever it was, he bandaged his wrists and kept moving. Not because he had resolved the despair or found a new reason to survive, but because stopping had failed and forward was the only remaining direction. 3 more days of walking, feet covered in infected blisters, every breath dry, every muscle cramped, the sun distorting the terrain, mountains appearing and vanishing, the ground shimmering constantly. He had crossed into Algeria without realizing it, and the landscape had changed, rockier, less familiar, further from anything he recognized as the race route. Then, on the 9th day, figures appeared through the heat. He thought he was hallucinating again. He had been seeing shapes in the distance for days. Dark figures moving across sand, water shimmering on the horizon, hope dissolving the moment he moved toward it. But these figures didn't dissolve. They grew larger. They changed direction toward him. Tuareg nomads. A woman from a nomadic family who had spotted a figure moving across the desert that didn't move like someone who knew where they were going. They brought him to their camp, gave him water and dates and goat's milk carefully. Too much too fast can kill someone in his condition. and sat with him through the night while his body began the slow process of accepting that it was going to live. He had lost 18 kilograms. He had been missing for 9 days. The race organization had conducted searches and found nothing, and the official assumption by the time the Tuareg found him had quietly shifted from rescue to recovery. He was flown to an Algerian hospital, then back to Italy, then through the long, unglamorous process of physical rehabilitation. The body rebuilt pound by pound, the psychological weight carried differently than the physical damage, but for longer. Mauro Prosperi went back to the Marathon des Sables. For more times, he finished it. The race that had taken him 9 days into the Sahara, that had left him cutting his wrists in an abandoned shrine. He went back and ran it again and finished it, because some people's relationship with the thing that almost destroyed them is not fear or avoidance, but something more complicated and more honest than either. He was found alive when the math said he shouldn't have been. He survived on bats and urine and the accidental mercy of blood too thick to flow. And on the day he decided to die, the desert that had been trying to kill him for 6 days kept him alive by taking too much. That is not irony. That is the Sahara. And Mauro Prosperi knows it better than almost anyone alive. He has said in interviews that the Sahara changed something in him that never fully changed back. Not in a broken way, in a calibrated way. Once you have spent 9 days alone in a desert that had decided you weren't worth rescuing, once you have eaten bats in the dark and drunk your own waste and pressed a knife to your wrists and had the desert itself refuse to let you go. The things that used to feel like pressure stop feeling like pressure. Traffic, deadlines, difficult conversations, the small daily friction of being alive in a world built for comfort. None of it registers the same way after the Sahara. What registers is simpler. Water, shade, the sound of another human voice, the specific feeling of ground that isn't trying to kill you, the understanding, not intellectual, not philosophical, but physical and permanent, that survival is not one dramatic moment of heroism. It is not a decision made once and carried forward. It is a decision made again and again in the dark, when the reasons to stop accumulate and the reasons to continue have to be invented from whatever is left. Mauro Prosperi invented them from bats and urine and a knife that found blood too thick to flow. And then he went back and ran the race again. For times. Because that is what it looks like when a person has genuinely reckoned with the thing that almost ended them. Not avoidance, not bravado, but the quiet return to the place that showed you exactly who you are when everything else is stripped away. The Sahara showed Mauro Prosperi something most people spend their entire lives successfully avoiding seeing. He went back to look at it again. That is not madness. That is the most honest thing a person can do. The storm came. The desert swallowed him. 9 days passed and the world moved on without him. And somewhere in the silence of the Sahara, a man who had built his entire identity around pushing past the point where ordinary people stopped, found the one point he couldn't push past alone, then pushed past it anyway, one more step, then another, until the world found him again.